Welcome to the Simplified Dentistry podcast. Join us as we discuss clinical, operational, and financial aspects of your practice, help you enjoy life, and dare to simplify dentistry.
Welcome back to the Simplified Dentistry podcast. I'm your host, Mortaza Shakan. Today, along with Mustafa Shakan, we're happy to welcome Dr. Meena Barsoum to the podcast. Meena is a graduate of Case Western Reserve University and practices in the Chicago area. He's a CDOCS faculty member, teaches at Spear Education, and is a leader in the world of digital dentistry. Meena, thanks for joining us.
We'd like to thank our sponsor, Kettenbach USA. From restorative to preventative to TMJ and world-class impression material, Kettenbach Dental offers award-winning German manufacturing materials designed to innovate and simplify existing dental practices. Visit KettenbachUSA.com for a risk-free trial.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're saying yours looks more professional than ours because you look like you're on stage. but you're kind of used to being on stage.
Yeah.
You know, it's the power
world and all that.
A green screen and Zoom can really make you look as professional as you want. So
that's right. I'm gonna start getting a green screen. You know.
Yeah.
Obviously, Simplified Dentistry. We've kind of started this community and podcast portion where we get to spend some time with guys like you, industry leaders and experts, and just kind of have discussions on things that we think are relevant to the profession and kind of where things are going. I'm a dinosaur. I'm 54, but and so we had some of the other dinosaurs on earlier before you. We had Sam Puri and Mike Scramstad kind of talking about where CDOCS and stuff like that kind of came from, and as we were talking, you're kind of in the middle of it. You're in the throes of it. Being I would say the main clinical guy over there. Tell us a little bit about kind of your story, where you kind of came from, and then we'll dive into CAD/CAM, where it's going now.
Yeah, no, and thanks for having me, guys. I mean, I applaud you for building that community. I know there were some discussions about things that are super relevant to what we do on X-ray sensors and things like that. So it's a great place to kind of chat about some of the valuable things in dentistry. So thanks for building that. I will say my foray into digital dentistry, I kind of went a little unorthodox in how I started. I did a residency for a year when I moved to Chicago just because I needed to figure out what to do. I just got married and moved to a new city, so it was a whole new thing for me. During that year, I couldn't find a practice that I wanted to buy, couldn't find an associate position, so I decided I'm just going to hang up a shingle and build. And this was in 2010, so it was kind of the middle of a recession, not the best time to do any of that. And I had nothing but time, honestly, when I first started this practice. It was slow. I was working 3 different jobs, like 6, 7 days a week, just trying to make ends meet. And because there was so much time in the practice, I decided, I need to differentiate myself. So I bought a CEREC like within 6 months. I bought a scratch and dent unit from the Patterson showroom that was a compact milling machine and a blue cam. And like, it was a dinosaur at the time when I bought it. And I remember specifically, like, as soon as I got it, I realized how much I didn't know, which is important to understand as a young dentist. Mm-hmm. So I spent probably the first 3 years of my career, I probably spent easily close to 6 figures on CE just in CDOCS and Spear, or CEREC doctors at the time, and Spear and other implant curriculums and implants. I mean, because I had time, right? So I was really investing in my education. And my first workshop I took, I went to Scottsdale Center for Dentistry at the time, and I took a course with Sam, and Sam kind of taught me the basics of prep, powder, picture, and like things that we learned back in the day. And I didn't have any money. Like, I remember sharing a taxi back to the airport with Sam just because I was like, I mean, I'm brand new out of school, barely making ends meet, and that was my like first entry into friendship with Sam. And it's been almost 15 years now that we've known each other, and I've known Mike just as long. So those two have been like really instrumental in my career. They've helped me along the way in so many different avenues. Sam, I can't shake him. He's followed me over to Imagine as our chief clinical officer, and finally got rid of Scrammy. He's on the Spear side now, so I can kind of float on my own. But I mean, I owe those two a lot in terms of what I've learned over the years. And one of our big things in the CDOCS community now is we try to pay things forward. So what we learn, we teach others, and we help now others become speakers and educators in the community as well. So that's a little bit about where I am now, and it's part of a community that I'm going to be part of for the rest of my career.
talking about, obviously when you first started, you're investing in yourself and you didn't have any money. I remember, when I first started with spear courses and things like that. And I remember, they'd be like, all right, this course is $5,000. And I was like, where in the hell am I going to get $5,000 to pay for this?
Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
so you start talking to them, you're like, all right, can I pay you this much a month for this many periods or whatever it
Yeah.
was? And,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people go into this stuff thinking, well, all these guys have all this money and they, so then they can just kind of fund it. And I don't have that, and I think that's a misnomer. I think,
Oh
we
yeah.
all struggled at
Hmm.
certain points to get the education and build on this and be able to become successful in this profession.
Well, I mean, $5,000 is just 5 crowns, Doc. I mean, that's all you got to do. It pays for itself, right? It's easy math.
Yeah.
I will say, like what Dentsply Sirona did in building those clinical accelerators with equipment purchases really has helped dentists not worry about that per se. I think it's good
Definitely.
and bad. I think
Yeah.
when you pay for something, you value it more, you take it more seriously.
For
When you're
sure.
paying for it indirectly, it's part of your equipment purchase, but I think it's different when you have to write a check or make that credit card payment and really value that. And I had to do that, right? I spent it was like 5 grand on FGTP that I took with Frank
Hmm.
Spear.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
that's been like the most game-changing education. I hate using that term, but it really changed how I look at patients and how I do comprehensive dentistry. And to me, it was the best 5 grand I ever spent. So, I mean, those are things that are good and bad. I think dentists now have better access to online education and, less costly education, but nothing beats being in person and writing a check.
No, and I think,
Yeah.
guys really miss. I think we were fortunate to be able to sit down and listen to Frank, or be in
Yeah.
a seminar with him and 30 other people. I just don't think there is that anymore. Obviously, he has had other people kind of come in there
Yeah.
who've taken his place. So there are excellent educators. But yeah, I mean it's a crazy world. I remember one time I'd signed up for one of his courses because I was trying to get one of the last ones in and I paid $6,000 or whatever. And they were like, well, he's not going to teach it. And I was like, well, I'm not coming. I was
Yeah,
like,
exactly. I know.
but
The hard thing. I mean, and we went through that. I mean, once when Sam left, people didn't
Yeah.
want to come to CDOCS, and we had to remind them. Sam spent a long time educating, but he also spent a long time being administrator, and many of us learned from him, and we're kind of carrying that torch on. So, obviously, like these people are instrumental to these companies, but there has to be room for growth, and I think
Yeah.
like Greg Kinzer's done a great job over
yeah,
there,
Yeah.
taking the reins from Frank and. I see Frank every so often. I give him the same joke I always do, and he chuckles. But I know he's a big wine guy, so I always offer him like the finest 2024 Franzia that I have, and he chuckles and sarcasm. But I mean, it's just it's what we do. But
Yeah.
he understands like he's still got value, but there's so many other clinicians out there that work with him that also have value.
So you entered into the CAD CAM CEREC world in 2010. That's probably, right when I entered. It's interesting, you talked to Mike and you talked to Sam, Mike was talking about, he entered, early on. And I think,
Yeah,
I think, Sam entered when, Barney Rubble was still making it.
sure, right, right, yeah,
But the crazy thing is like, they were talking about, the amount of mistakes they made. They knew the dentistry wasn't as good at that point in time, but they were investing in it and kind of trying to figure it out. You and I kind of entered into the point where I would guess we both entered right in the Emacs era.
exactly.
So the game was different. Talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
It was kind of a cheat mode for us, honestly. And I will say, like, Sam and Scrammy are significantly older than I am, like, really significantly older. I mean, decades. But, coming in, Blue Cam was a learning curve, but the software was pretty good at creating single unit restorations that fit well. And we had material like Emacs that, ironically, today I had to cut one of my old Emaxs off because there was recurrent decay under there. And I remember like, man, I was doing a good job bonding back then, apparently, because this sucks. And that material is really hard and it's hard to cut off. And it makes you like value the materials and where they are. And I look at today and we have, the ability to put zirconia in there where we couldn't, put glass ceramics before and milling versus grinding and all the innovations that have happened. I mean, yes, it was kind of a cheat mode back then, but I think we're in a bigger cheat mode now when it comes to like zirconia and the implant workflows and just full arch scanning in general. I mean, I think I was probably the first person to try a full arch scan with the blue cam.
Oh wow.
Imagine powdering and doing a
How
full
much
arch
powder was
scan. I mean,
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, a patient looked like a Smurf when they were done. Like they were covered in blue, and but that was what we did. I mean, we tried to push the envelope, and I think now anybody could pick up a Prime Scan too and scan on a browser from any operatory. There's no learning curve really, and it's a
Mhm.
different world now than it was even when I started. Definitely when Sam and Scrammy were in there.
Yeah. So I said, when I picked it up, right around then, you had to become a better dentist. You couldn't,
Yeah.
you didn't have anybody to make up for your deficiencies, and the computer read in ones and zeros. You think that's still the case, or do you think it's gotten easier?
I will say I have a love-hate relationship with many things, zirconia being one of them. I love, love, love zirconia just because I can be more conservative. My margins are clean and crisp and everything. I can cement again. I don't like it because I think it makes dentists kind of lazy with their preps because it's so forgiving. You can be a lot less precise with your margins and the clarity of your margins and the smoothness and internal angles and things because you're milling something
Hmm.
26% bigger and shrinking it down. So I don't like that per se because I think it's making us a little bit lazier, but I do love
Mhm.
it that it's more forgiving. And at the end of the day, if it gives my patient a better final result, then I think it's worth it. And that's what's happening in dentistry is a lot of dentists are, prepping faster and less careful, and zirconia is solving those errors, and they're happy. Patients get good dentistry at that point. So, um, yeah, I mean it's kind of my weird thing with it. And yes, I do like 100% zirconia in the posterior now. It's like
Sure.
literally
Yeah.
everything we do.
So it kind of goes back to that too. Did you ever take Bob Winter's restorative course at
Oh yeah.
Spear?
Yeah.
So that was
You
the
want to
game.
hate yourself and feel bad about your preps. I mean, that is the course to take. I got bigger
Yeah.
loops after that course thinking they were going
Hmm.
to help, and nope, no. So, but it
Yeah.
was a it's tremendous course to help you understand how important preparation is.
I was ready
Yeah.
to get a microscope when he was
Yeah.
prepping posterior units with a microscope. I was like, this is craziness.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. I know. I'm as close as I'm going to get to a microscope. I have ergo loops now, 7.5x. That's about as big as
Wow.
I want to see my shittier preps. So I'm
That's right.
happy. I'm happy with 7.5x, and I think it just gives me. I tried a microscope honestly. Like in residency, we used it for endo, and I
Hmm.
get this claustrophobia where I just feel like I can't see my surroundings and the patient's body language and response, and to me, it wasn't ideal. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think microscopes are for endodontists. That's who needs
Yeah.
that shit.
yeah,
Yeah, not
yeah,
Or
me.
or I guess Kinder's wife, she uses a microscope all the
she loves
time.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a
Really?
lot. I mean, there's a lot of like the biomimetic guys that really do adhesive dentistry. I mean, they love microscopes, and I think
Yeah.
you're a single tooth dentist that focuses on like bonding and adhesive, I think it's great. But if you're working in a quadrant, it's really hard to be efficient with a scope, prepping 3 or 4
Yeah.
teeth or to me it's not ideal for me.
Yeah. Same here. I couldn't. I mean, there's no way I could make it work.
So are you still using Emacs much besides implants? Are you using it in the
I
anterior a
am,
little
yeah.
bit? Yeah.
No, I'm doing a lot of, I mean, we do a lot of like full mouth cases and anterior aesthetic cases. I love Emacs. I think it's a
Sure.
beautiful glass ceramic. I think Tessera is a beautiful glass ceramic. I think the handling's a little bit different. So some people just have to get used to using that new material. But I love glass ceramic in the anterior. Even though I've done a fair share of zirconia cases,
Hmm.
I can characterize glass better. I can characterize like specifically Emacs, especially in the purple phase. I just see the line
Sure.
angles better. I can put more definition in it, and I think the results are better. And I do like bonding, Emacs in the anterior because I'm doing more conservative preps. I'm trying to stay in enamel, and I know you can bond zirconia, and there's a whole process for it. I'm still a glass guy in the anterior and zirconia in the posterior.
So getting back to Frank a little bit, I remember one time Frank was like, you don't have to bond Emacs. Emacs can be cemented if you have whatever, I think it was 80 microns of spacer and things like
Right.
that. And I think he said there was not a huge difference. Do you exclusively bond your um, Emacs?
They will tell you, the manufacturer will tell you, Avoclar will say you have increased bond strength, or sorry, fracture toughness when you bond, right? So
Hmm.
you can go down to a millimeter with Emacs if you bond it. You want to be at 1.5 if you're cementing, more for traditional retention resistance form prep. And do I cement some of them? Absolutely. If it's a traditional crown prep in the anterior with ferrule and retention resistance form, I will cement it if I can, because I look at these patients and I realize like no matter how good my bond is, if they don't take care of it, there's going to be recurrent decay, and this is going to have to get redone. And I don't want to make it difficult for the next person and over traumatize that tooth if they have to cut it off. So I'm mindful of that, but at the same token, I also want to be conservative. And if I'm staying in enamel, it's a
Hmm.
veneer prep or like a crown lay or some type of onlay, I'm bonding it. I'm bonding it always. And just because that's the workflow that we've done for years, and I still like that. I still
Yeah.
like resin cementation, minimal thickness, and maximum fracture toughness.
I think that's nice that you think about the next guy when you're thinking about cutting off the crown. I wish I did that, but I don't. I bond them in and
As long as you're not the next guy, everything's great, right?
That's
So,
right. So something I was thinking about, obviously we started probably in Sirac close to the same world, same time. What led you to go down the educational path, and change directions from just being a day in day out clinician?
if you asked me even 15 years ago, so I've been out of school since 2009, so 15 years I've been a dentist. I had to give our commencement speech for graduation. It was the most nervous I've ever been in my life. Like to be in front of, we had 80 some students in our class. So imagine like a 200 people with family and whatever. To be able to stand in front of that group and give a speech was the most nervous I've ever been. I swore after that I would never do any public speaking. Like I hate this. And
Hmm.
I mean, just a couple months ago, I did a live procedure in front of like 5,000 people at DS World, and I'm
Wow.
comfortable with it. There's no fear there for me anymore because I've done it enough. And I think it was something I never thought I'd be doing. I never thought I'd be like reasonably adept at doing it. But I realized like when it comes to technology, I mean, I can lecture on technology and workflows and, simplifying things for dentists all day. To me, it just comes naturally, and I can get up there and, okay, here's what the software wants you to do. Here's how you can think about it and really simplify things. I found myself like kind of good at it, and I gave a couple lectures at our local study club that Rich Rosenblatt started, 20 years ago, and that was kind of my start into speaking. And it was again nerve-wracking. I spent months preparing a 60-minute keynote that
Sure.
eventually got deleted off my computer for whatever reason by accident. And it's just like you put in all this time, and then after that, it just became kind of muscle memory and just realizing, once you get that first like 30 seconds going in a lecture,
Hmm.
even now, like once I get through my first minute, it's just like, okay, let's go. And I have like this muscle memory of speaking. And I love it. It's such an important part of my career that I think it's done a really good job at keeping me from burning out. I think dentists get to that 15-year mark and they start hating everything and everything around them.
Sure. Hmm.
And I'm not there yet. I still love what I do. I love my team, and I think being able to travel and speak and lecture and kind of hear from other dentists has really helped me kind of avoid that burnout.
What happens to a lot of guys is just not having any other outlet. If all you're doing
Yeah.
is dentistry all the time, I think it makes you want to beat your head up against the wall. And that's what I was telling him, when we've done other things in dentistry and now doing this, it kind of gives you that outlet, and
yeah.
it allows
Right.
you to kind of to share kind of what dentistry has been for you.
Yeah.
So getting back into like did was it Mike and Sam talking you into joining in with them, or was it Rich Rosenblatt, or how did it work?
No, it was so yeah, I mean like my first lecture was it was I remember this exactly. It was in Chicago. It was one of our monthly study clubs. Don Bell was in the audience. He's the VP of everything at Ivoclar.
Hmm.
And the lecture was on the Telio cat abutment block when they first started
Sure. Yeah.
launching it.
Hmm.
No one could get me a block. No one could give me any information on it. They wanted a lecture on it. So I ended up buying these blocks from Germany
Hmm.
overseas. And like I didn't have software to do it. And I built this lecture. And I was so nervous to do it. And it was a great lecture from, the feedback I got. And that kind of started that process. And CDOCS or CEREC doctors at the time, we had this mentor group that I was involved in. And,
Sure.
you know, I would go probably 5, 6 times a year and I'd mentor workshops. And every so often, like Sam or Scrammy would let me do a demo. They let me kind of speak in front of the room. And that slowly led to me. And I literally cornered Sam. I said, I want to be part of this organization. I want to speak here.
Sure.
And I'm good
Hmm.
at it. And I want you to evaluate me. And, I asked for it. And he's like, all right,
Okay.
good, because I'm ready to hang him up. So the timing worked out. And eventually Sam kind of phased down. And Mike and I worked together for many years, co-teaching a lot of the workshops. And then now Dan Butterman's the leader of the pack, running CDOCS and being so involved in Spear, and we're a different group now, but we're growing, and I'm excited to be part of this new vision that we have.
Yeah, I mean, the first place I met you and Mike and Sam was at the Dental West Verona headquarters here in Charlotte when y'all
Yeah,
were teaching courses. And that after, I'm the late adopter in this group to
sure.
CIRAC.
Yeah.
I got my prime scan, 5 years ago now.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And same sort of stuff with, going to the courses here. That's really changed the game for me. Um, how much of your time is spent on the educational stuff and how much are you clinical? Is there an even breakdown for that for you or?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say probably for the last like 7 years or so, I've been working Monday through Wednesday,
Okay.
every day. Sorry, like every week, it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I work a full day. I've had an associate for a while, and that's really helped me kind of be able to go out and speak on Thursdays and Fridays and the weekends. So,
Hmm.
Alyssa's been with me for I think 6, 7 years now. And then now we just hired another associate, Lindsay, who's going to be kind of carrying on. So we're gonna have three doctors here in the office, and I'll be a little bit more free to, take a Wednesday off and do something else and not work or, not have to lecture. So it's gonna be nice for me to kind of jump into that phase of the career. But
It's a tough thing to be able to lecture without having the clinical. I mean, everybody's has
yeah,
the clinical background, but if you're not in there and you can't take pictures of what you're doing and try different things, it's impossible to
Yeah.
lecture on
it
it, you know.
doesn't matter. And so there's a lot of really talented people that can do it, that have done it. I know myself, and if I'm not wet-fingered and, practicing what I preach and failing and learning from failures and documenting materials and workflows, I'm not going to want to do it because I won't feel genuine and authentic up there, speaking
Sure.
about a
Yeah.
case I did 7 years ago that is material that isn't possible now or that we don't even use with a scanner that doesn't exist. And it to me just wouldn't be right. So I always want to be involved in practice no matter how long I do this. I'll at least work 1 or 2 days a week forever until I want to
Sure.
like be done.
So
Hmm.
so CAD CAM dentistry, CEREC dentistry, it has changed obviously in all of our careers. Where do you see it right now? Where do you see it going?
I think many of us, I think CAD CAM, users kind of fall into probably one or two or three different camps, right? You have your power users that want to do everything and like cheat the system and find workarounds and do all this crazy stuff. Then you have like your big majority. I just want it to work. I don't want to be on the bleeding edge. I don't want to try the latest software. And then you have those that just want to scan, right? They don't want to make anything in the office, and it's just like a CAD only type of workflow. And I think
Hmm.
most dentists in the digital world fall into one of those three. I'm definitely on the bleeding edge where I want to try everything and be involved in it. And I think that group and the middle group are starting to mix a little bit more, right? Where, the simple use wants a little bit more, the power users want a little bit more like simplicity as well. Like I just want it to work when it works and I want to play when I want to play. So
Hmm.
what I'm seeing happening is like we used to go through there's InLab to do this and the ortho software to scan and do this and the CEREC software for this and which version of InLab and what's CAD and what's CAM and like all this crazy stuff and what license do I need and do I put the dongle on this computer and like
Yeah.
all this
Yeah.
crazy stuff of like
Yeah.
managing, basic like dongles and software and licenses. I see it going away and I see it for the good because what's happening now, and obviously DS has built this DS Core platform, and the PrimeScan 2 works on DS Core, and it's no secret that's where everything's going to go is a cloud-based kind of software.
Hmm.
I like it because it'll be kind of a pay to play, right? So if you want to have advanced workflows, you pay this much per month. If you want to have
Hmm.
basic bread and butter single units, you pay less, right? If you just want to scan only, you pay even less. And I
Hmm.
think that model is going to help fill many of the dentists
Yeah,
that need this
I didn't
kind of
realize it
a
tiers like that, you know.
they don't yet, right? And I think, right
Okay.
now the tiers are based on, and I don't want to speak out of place. I mean, this is just like what I'm seeing, kind of reading through the lines, in between the lines, kind of understanding where the company's going. Right now your tiers are based on storage, but I mean, moving
Yeah.
forward, if there's no such thing as like a on-premise in-lab and an on-premise CEREC on a cart, you're gonna have to pay for it, and you're gonna have to have it on a software version on a cloud, right? So
Right.
that'll eventually be what it looks like, and I think it's a good way to do it. I think you get to purchase in a very easy way the features and the uses that you want out of the software, and what you don't want to have, you don't have to pay for. And I think it'll simplify things for those dentists that never want to restore an implant chairside or only want to do posterior teeth, or those that
Hmm.
want to do everything. They can kind of pick where they fall in.
So what's your experience like, or what's your experience been like with the new Prime Scan 2?
I will say, and let's be fair. I mean, I was an early beta tester in it, and I
Yeah.
felt some initial kind of hiccups and things. And I will say, it needs right now a very dedicated and powerful internet speed,
Yeah.
that will help support the upload requirements. And right now, I mean, you need 50 megabytes upload, which is not super available to everybody in the market. So
Sure.
there is a
Yeah.
cost to upgrade your infrastructure.
Hmm.
But what I know is like on the back end, the compression's getting better and some of the development and engineering on the back end is getting better. So those requirements will go down over time. I love it. I mean, I love the ability of pulling up a scanner and just, I mean, I run Macs in the office. So for me, it's always been a hassle like running any Windows-based application like my Seric. I'd have to wheel in the cart or
Yeah.
whatever. Now I can just open up Google Chrome and scan in any operatory, and hygiene uses it, dental assistants use it, all the doctors use it. So it's really improved that workflow for me. I
Hmm.
think it's got some room to grow right now in terms of what you can actually do with it. We have limited catalogs. There's a little bit of a speed situation with it in terms of like processing behind the scenes. I know that's going to get better because it's already
Yeah.
gotten better in the 6 or 8 months that I've had it. So it's the future. We just have to accept the fact that we're going to be in the cloud for literally everything we do. I mean, we've moved that way on the DPMS side of the practice management side. Uh, like my software is all cloud-based, so
Hmm.
you know, charts, X-rays, everything, and everything is going to the cloud. I don't want to have a server in the office, and I think that's where now scanning is going.
Yeah, we were I can't remember if we had a guest or if Rick Offit, our other partner, and I were on somebody else's podcast, but there was the opinion by somebody, and they were like, look, there's a lot of docs out there that are pissed off at a line, and they're pissed off at Dentsply Sirona, and it's because they feel like with a line, you buy a scanner, you can't sell it,
Yeah,
and after you know 3, 4, 5 years, it's kind of obsolete. You got to get the next one.
right.
Docs feel the same way a little bit about Dentsply Sirona. You buy an Omnicam, and then it basically becomes obsolete in 4 or 5 years. You buy Prime Scan 1, and I mean, hell, I'm still paying for Prime Scan 1, and then they're like Prime Scan 2's out here, and like, what are they going to do? They're going to make it obsolete, and I have to get Prime Scan 2. I mean, where do you see it? Yeah,
They're not going to do that. And I can tell you right now, I mean, I can start a scan on my Prime Scan, my original Prime Scan from DS Core. Like I can send it,
Hmm.
I can go into DS Core, pull up my patient's chart, send the scan administration right to my Prime Scan and start scanning, and then it goes right back to DS Core. So that
Hmm.
workflow exists today, and that's not going to go away. And I think there's always like again more love and hate relationships, right? Like
Sure.
sure.
I love the fact that they're innovating. Absolutely. Do I hate that
Yeah.
it's so frequent with certain technology? Yeah, I mean it's kind of frustrating when you just bought something
Yeah.
and now the newest thing is out, and I think it really hurts the late adopters that come in like at the very end of Prime Scan, and all of a sudden Prime
Yeah.
Scan 2 is out, and now you're upset. If
Hmm.
you're a bleeding edge Prime Scan owner, you've had it for 4 or 5 years, and you're like, all right,
Yeah.
probably time for a new one anyway.
Sure.
Um, I will give them credit. I think they priced the Prime Scan 2 in the right place.
That's what I was gonna
Um,
say. Yeah.
we didn't get the typical DS tax that we normally get, where it's another,
Sure.
five more figures of whatever. And I think they priced it well, and I hope that continues with more innovations in the future.
Yeah. So one thing that came up, obviously on Simplified Dentistry was, you know, being Sure Smile or being an Invisalign kind of guy. I know you
Yep.
said you're a Sure Smile guy. Are you a Sure Smile guy because you're a bigger believer in the Prime Scan technology and Sirona, or do you feel like it's as good a product as Invisalign, or do you feel like it's a better product than Invisalign, or where are you there?
I want to be fair with my comparison of Invisalign because it's probably been almost 10 years since I've used Invisalign.
Sure.
Oh wow.
And so the last time I used Invisalign, our only option was the Omnicam with the ortho software and guided scanning. And that was probably what, 2015, 2016.
Sure.
And then the Prime Scan came out, and obviously politics. They didn't want to
Yeah.
allow the Prime Scan, even though it's a better scanner than the Omnicam was, and that bothered me. And then, so there was kind of this like middle time when Sure Smile wasn't even a thing, and Invisalign was still kind of the king of the road. And so I went to ClearCorrect for a while. I didn't love that product. And then all of a sudden, Dentsply bought Orametrics, which is now Sure Smile. And what I loved about that product is it was fully open. Any scan can go in and you can export STLs of different models. So I went through this phase in my career where I was doing my own in-house aligners, which was like psychotic when you think about it, like printing 40 models and making aligners on each model. But I love the ability to do it. And that got me into the Sure Smile workflow. And then now, I mean, everything is, I have them manufacture everything. And I will say primarily the reason for me right now is My equipment supports it. Even though I have an iTero, I would rather scan with the Prime Scan for an ortho case. And my cost is significantly less with SureSmile than it is with Align. And
Hmm.
results wise, we've done hundreds of aligner cases, and yeah, every so often you'll get one, maybe two refinements if the patient's really picky, but most of the cases finish without a refinement, and that's all I care about. So I get them
Interesting.
done, and they get their retainers, and they're
Hmm.
on their way. So it's predictable. I think the movements are better tracked because a person is doing it versus AI. Even though
Hmm.
AI is probably getting better on the Align side, but a person is doing it on the SureSmile side. So those are things that I value still when it comes to that. And you know, I mean, not to be like funny about it, but with Imagine, my pricing is ridiculously inexpensive
Sure.
with
Hmm.
Smile. So it makes no sense not to use it, and I've used it successfully for years.
I think that's interesting that you said that you almost have no refinements. There has been discussion on our platform where guys are saying, yeah, I don't have refinements with SureSmile. I do Invisalign, and I always have I mean, I
Yeah.
almost always have refinements, but I also almost always do kind of mid-course corrections and things like
Sure. Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a me issue or if it's a line issue or if I mean if it'd be the same thing through SureSmile, but that's good to know.
There's just so many philosophies around it. Like Galler's got his whole like curriculum on how you set up a clean check, and nothing should be less than 20 aligners or more than 20. Like it's just to me
Sure.
that was too variable, right? Like
Hmm.
why should I follow this process versus the company's process, and why do we have to, you know, basically, game the system to get a better result? Like that bothered me.
But you
We
have
use a
to
product
in
called
Invisalign.
dental monitoring. So we use something called dental monitoring, which allows us to track our patients remotely.
Hmm.
So I give my patients every aligner at the first visit. So we put
Hmm.
the attachments on. Usually I preserve like IPR for the fifth aligner. So I'll give them like their first four, see them back in, 2 months or whatever. And then I do the IPR when the teeth have unraveled and there's a little bit more room to do it safely. And then they get the rest of their trays. And dental monitoring allows them to scan the tooth position and the tray seating every week on an app. My team looks at the pictures. The AI, recognizes if the trays aren't fitting well. So we do mid-course corrections. I guess we can call that a refinement. But if I see that a
Hmm.
tray is not tracking and the patient isn't doing well, I bring them in, we scan again, and we do an adjustment there versus having them continue to not track for,
Sure. Yeah.
18
Yeah.
more trays and then starting over. But what I like is if I do that and they track to completion and the final result looks like what I planned and the patients are happy. And if there's little minor tweaks, sometimes they're restorative tweaks, sometimes they're
Hmm.
orthodontic tweaks. And we call them, fine tuning, not a refinement. So it's just verbiage for the patient. But
Sure.
that monitoring system allows me to catch issues earlier than later.
We had another guy talk about what Candid Pro, another.
Yeah. I think that might have been Tarun talking about
Yeah.
Candid Pro. Um,
Is that a DIY aligner, or what am
I
I thinking
don't
of?
think so. I think it's supposed to be something that
Like a tracker?
practitioners doing, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
And you can also do the patient can do the at-home tracking for you too.
as we know,
I mean, we
Tarun will
don't
do
have
almost anything.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, he'll try whatever and then
Yeah.
poo-poo everything else. So it just
Yeah.
depends on his mood. I love Tarun. I've learned a lot from him too over the years,
Yeah.
and he and I have debated heavily on things, and we still do. But I will say, like, I don't have ortho like periodic visits anymore. Like that's not a
Sure.
20-minute or 10-minute appointment in my schedule because I don't need it, right? I can track them, and if there's an issue, we call them. My team texts them back and forth in the app, and there's a cost to it, but it's worth it because I
That's
eliminate the
kind of
chair time.
nice.
Yeah, of
Yeah. I didn't think about it that way.
Thank you again for joining us today.
course.
Obviously, lots going on in the CAD CAM, lots going on in the CEREC world. Kind of we like to always kind of this whole platform is, how can we make things simpler for our docs and, how together can we like to say, how can we dare to simplify dentistry? Kind of what are your takeaways for our audience or, for our listeners about, what can you do to simplify their day in, day out lives? And, kind of what takeaway messages do you have?
I will say this, and I say this a lot. This is kind of my philosophy with things. There's always a workflow and a workaround. And sometimes the workaround is cheaper and involves three or four different softwares, and you can end up getting to the same result. But what I've learned over the years is you can't delegate a workaround. Okay, you can delegate a workflow. And what makes my life easy in my practice is that I've delegated a lot of the technological workflows to my team. And it's one of the things why, I mean, I love Dentsply Sirona for making simple workflows like CEREC into the mill, scanning into CEREC, and all that works well. But when I start getting into, okay, here's this like inexpensive scanner, but you got to bring it into this CAM software and then this export STL and bring it into here, and it becomes like this jumbled mess. Yes, you saved a few dollars on the front end, but
Sure.
what does that look like
Hmm.
on a day-to-day basis? When, I mean, I'm looking at my schedule, I had seven crown patients today, and they were just staggered around, and I still had five hygiene, columns that I had to like manage. So I could only do that because my team can manage the design and the milling and the manufacturing. So my advice to anybody getting into technology, look for workflows. Those are going to make your life easier. You may spend a few more dollars up front, but you will be happier later on because you won't have to do everything yourself. You'll be able to delegate more.
And that's
You
awesome.
must like having a lot of staff to have 7 crowns in one day and staggering them around.
Yeah, and it's like that would not be my ideal day would be 8 crowns on one patient and then I go
Yeah.
home instead of
Sure.
seven single units all day. That's
Yeah.
like, but it's fine. I mean, it's the way we practice. We're a busy office and my team, they know if my door's closed, leave me alone. I'm designing something or I'm frustrated. So, and then
Sure.
they handle the rest. So it's been great. I've been fortunate.
That's awesome. What a great team to have.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you again. We really appreciate you taking the time and kind of sharing some of your knowledge with our listeners. We appreciate everything you're doing in the CIRAC world and everything you're doing for the profession. Thank you.
Thank you guys. No,
All right.
thank
Thanks,
you.
Mina.
Appreciate it. Take care.